Good afternoon, everyone. See, we slowly have people ticking in, attendees ticking in. So we're just going to wait 30 more seconds before we start the webinar. So yes, good afternoon to everyone in European time, and good morning to everyone who is joining us from North America. Great. I will start now. So yes, hello everyone. Really lovely to see all of you joining. Today we have over 400 people attending this webinar. Interested to hear what do the US or the North American clients want? What are they looking for? What type of products are they interested in? And how can the European supply chain help fulfill those dreams? We will start with a quick introduction of all of the panelists. Just if you would like to just quickly explain to us your company, who you are, what you do, your business model, what is your clientele, anything else that would be interesting for the audience to know. Brett, if you would like to start.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Brett Walker. I am here in my office in Mississauga, just outside of Toronto, Canada. I am the general manager for Colette here in Canada as well. I oversee our international operations around the world. Colette offers guided touring pretty much around the world. We have primarily two different brands. We have our Colette brand, which is typically your motor coach. We also have a small group brand called Explorations by Colette, which is capped at anywhere between 18 and 24. So it's small group, but it's the same concept of guided touring. Really happy to be here and entertain any questions and hopefully provide you with more information throughout the webinar. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brett. Robin, do you want to go next?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Stencil. I work in the tour operations department for Rick Steves Europe as the product manager. So we are a family-owned company. We do coach tours to Europe. Our group size is 24 to 28 people, North Americans, and I oversee our tour product for most of the continent. I think that's about it. I'm looking forward to talking about getting our travelers back over to Europe and excited to hear the coming trends.
Great, thank you, Robin. Mike, can we hear something about image tours?
Yeah, I'm Mike Kosmauskas, president of Image Tours. We're a small family-run company. We run our operation out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We get most of our clients from, if you can believe it, newspaper advertising, through travel agencies across the United States. Most of our clients are, don't want to get political here, but most of them are a little conservative. Half of them probably haven't even had a trip internationally, so that would be their first trip to Europe. And so I feel that our company, who focuses on escorted Europe tours only, helps to promote some tolerance and peace and exposure to those individuals that are a little bit conservatively based, and expose them to some European warmth, so that we can get some tolerance going on in America, if you will.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm glad to be here. So thanks you very much for inviting me.
Thank you very much. And Mike, just as you mentioned before to me that you are actually a full-on family-run company. It started with your grandfather in Amsterdam? Yes.
My wife's grandfather in Amsterdam started it, and he ran a pension in Austria for a little while. So we have some family in Amsterdam and in Austria, and we only work with European tour managers. So we have tour managers scattered around Europe, so we have some eyes and ears over there right now too.
Great, thank you. And Frank, so your company is a little bit different than what we've heard now. So let's hear more about Yankee Leisure Group.
Thank you, Sophia, and thanks for having me. Hey, everybody, I'm Frank Marini, President and Chief Executive Officer of Yankee Leisure Group. We own and operate several rail brands. So in the US, we operate Amtrak Vacations for Amtrak, and we own Rail Bookers, which is all FIT independent rail trips worldwide, predominantly in Europe. So for us, it's all FIT rails, so rail, sightseeing, hotel. And with our product, it's anything the customer wants it to be. So anything from a few days by rail, hotel, sightseeing, to the luxury rails, Venice, Simplon, Orient Express. And for us, we go any date, any time, any length of time. If the train goes there, so do we. Our customer base is a 50+ customer, and half of our business is sold direct and half through the trade, and we're preferred with all the preferred partners here in the US. So that's a little bit about us. Other things that are probably different is when everyone went home for COVID, we sent everyone home, but we kept everyone home, and we're a fully remote company now. So I've got staff in 19 states and 4 different countries, and to really working very effectively. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, Frank. All right, so before we get into questions and hear more about what you're thinking about 2022 demand, how your business is going, which sort of products you're developing, we're actually going to hear a little bit from Rachel Reed, who is our Director of Insight here at ETOA. She'll have some great information to share about the North American demand. So Rachel Reed, it's over to you.
Thank you, Sophie. Could you just reply, Sophie, whether you can see my screen?
Yes, it looks great. It's
fantastic. Lovely. Thank you very much, Sophie. So before we move on to what's happening at the coalface with our panelists who we've just heard from, Sophie's asked me to set the scene a little bit in terms of what the North American market looked like in 2019, so pre-COVID, before I move on to some consumer sentiment research for 2022 and a short look at the forecast for recovery back to what has now become the holy grail of 2019 travel levels. So let's have a look, shall we? What were those at 2019 levels? So we can see that we had 38.1 million people, arrivals from the US, and 6.5 from Canada, so some really healthy demand. It's worth just pointing out on this slide, which is from Tourism Economics, it's not 38.1 million and 6.5 million individual people coming. It's an instance of a visit of an arrival in Europe. So if you're visiting multiple countries, say you're visiting 3 countries, you will be counted 3 times on this particular slide. But it's very interesting to see the volume levels. And something that I think is worth adding to this slide is clearly the population of Canada much smaller than the US, but in terms of propensity to visit, that is the percentage of the population coming to Europe, actually Canadians have a higher propensity to visit Europe than Americans or did in 2019. So that's just quite an interesting snapshot there. And we can take a look at the figures from the US Department of Commerce on the trends in departures from the US to Europe, and we can see that in 2019 we had hit unprecedented levels of demand. We've got 17 million departures from the US to Europe, which is driven by an overall increase in outbound travel that we've been seeing from North America for quite a few years now, but nonetheless great to see a very good portion of that demand coming to Europe. And there's a couple of interesting stats to overlay onto this as well, also from the US Department of Commerce, which we had only 6.3% of US visitors into Europe in 2019 were on their first international trip. So it would imply that many would have chosen a closer destination before coming to Europe as an international destination. And about 11.7% of these people were using a prepaid package as opposed to doing all of their own planning. We've got here as well, if I move on, a similar one for Canada, although unfortunately we couldn't find one with Europe specifically split out. This is from Statistics Canada, but you can see almost a tripling, well, more than a tripling of demand in outbound travel over the last 20 years or so. coming from Canada. So really, really strong demand, which is good news for Europe. If we have a look at the share of visits by country, this is from the US, we can see the UK still at the top there on 23%, which is largely driven by the shared language. With Italy and France still very strong there as well, not too far behind, and then following in Spain and Germany, and then the smaller destinations generally in a longer tail. Just to point out on here, it does add up to more than 100 if anybody's got their calculator out. It's because some people visited more than one country, obviously, on their trip. Multi-country trips, as we know, are very popular with North American visitors. The average is 1.5 countries per trip, so clearly nobody's actually doing that, but lots of people doing 2 or 3. And in 2019, people were tending to book about 90 days out. So it'll be really interesting to hear from our panelists the extent to which that's changed with all the uncertainty we've seen over the last 18 months to 2 years. But it was 90 days in 2019. And just an interesting piece, which I meant to mention before, figures from UNWTO say the average expenditure for both people from the US and from Canada is about $1,300 per person per departure, so not excluding air. So that's the rough amount that people are spending. And if we take a look at the purpose of visits to Europe, we can see overwhelmingly people are coming for vacation, so 62%. And then the next biggest is visiting friends and relatives. So the leisure sector taking over 80% of the market. So great news for ETOA members, obviously, and business really only being at around 6%. So very, very, very strongly leisure focused in terms of the outbound market from North America to Europe. And I'll move on to here just to take a look at the types of activities that US visitors have undertaken whilst in Europe. As one might expect, sightseeing, shopping and history, art galleries, museums, etc., all extremely popular with lots of visitors. And then with the outdoor experiences, camping, hiking, etc., being less popular. With, of course, being that sightseeing and history is Europe's USP. And obviously, if one is living in North America, one has great access to camping, hiking and outdoor things there as well. 11 nights was the median length of stay for visits to Europe from the US. So people roughly taking around a fortnight out of their schedule to come on their European vacation. Now we can move on to some more recent figures here. Visit Britain did a study in the autumn of last year, so about 3 or 4 months ago now, which was looking at the consideration for future international leisure trips from the US and Canada. Really, really exciting to see that nearly 60% of the respondents from the US said they were definitely considering a trip in the future, and 42% from Canada. So really good, strong consumer intention. And then another almost quarter of respondents from both countries saying they probably would go. So it's certainly encouraging to see that towards the end of last year, you had only a relatively small percentage of people saying they're definitely not coming, which is the red bar. Great to see that that is the smallest in both cases. But of course, we all know consideration is one thing. It's great to know that people might be planning it. Visit Britain also did some work on how concrete those plans actually were. And we can see, again, very encouragingly, that almost a quarter of the people in the US, if you look at the darkest green bar, said they'd already booked travel or accommodation. Slightly more hesitancy in Canada to actually book, but certainly if you add up the 2 green bars, you can see a healthy proportion of people have at least decided where they're going to go, even if they haven't actually booked the accommodation. So the plan's reasonably solid, which is encouraging to see. My screen has stopped. Hang on. I do have a forecast to show you. Mhm. I'll just give it one more try, Sophie. Oh, there we go. It did arrive. Apologies. Oh, here
No
we go.
worries, Rachel, this happens. Yeah.
I'm back on. I'm hoping I am back on with a slide called Activators for International Leisure Trips. Am I up on there, Sophie? Right,
Yes, you
apologies for that.
are.
Yes. So this was the last bit of the Visit Britain study, where they asked the North American market, what is it that would help persuade you to book your international leisure trip? And money back guarantee was the biggest driver in both markets, which I think is something that we've seen worldwide, really, and obviously a significant decrease in COVID cases in the destination is also important. A few interesting differences between the US and Canada, US in red, Canada in blue on this chart, with Canadians being more concerned with insurance for travel changes, and then removal of quarantines in destinations and vaccine passports, slightly more important to Canadians than Americans, and ditto the removal of quarantine back home is something that concerns Canadians a bit more than the American market. But generally speaking, it's the money back and the actual number of cases in a destination, which is not particularly surprising, but interesting to see written here against all of the other possible activators for a trip. And I'll just move on to the last slide now, where we can think a little bit about forecasts for volumes in the future. And Tourism Economics have produced this chart it's an index chart. So the 100 line you can see there is the volume in 2019. And then the next few years you can see actual and forecast volumes obviously going right down below the index in 2020, a little bit up in 2021, where we know things were open, but it was incredibly difficult and you really had to be determined or in dire need of making a trip, really, for people to do that. What I think is interesting about this slide, though, is the very steep part you can see coming up between 2021 and 22, i.e. this year, where we see the majority of the recovery. So that is currently what's forecast from Tourism Economics, and then a gradual increase year on year through 23 and 24, with their prediction of 2019 volumes being reached in 2025. But it is important to note, as I said earlier on, the 2019 volumes from the North American market were absolutely unprecedented. So that would be your absolute goal, to return to that peak. But even returning to something slightly lower is not a bad thing for the industry. It would still only be the levels from a couple of years prior to that, when we were already on a high upward trend anyway. So I don't think it's necessarily a particularly depressing thing for it to be 2025 to reach that peak. If you look in 2023 and 24, you would be coming back to levels seen just a couple of years previously. So I think, Sophie, I will leave that there, because I know we've got so much to fit in and so many people to hear from. But I hope that that's set the scene nicely for us to move on to what's happening on the ground, and we can see if the reality is matching the research.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Rachel. This was very informative, very interesting. Yeah, and I would like to throw it out to the panel straight away. If you have any comments about these numbers, is your recovery looking like that? Is it better? Is it worse? And I think I would like to maybe start with Frank, because I know that 2022 is actually looking quite good for you, isn't it?
It is, for us, and we're a little bit different, because we're an FIT operator and a rail operator. So, 22 is very strong for us, looking strong. What's on the books for us, partly because our customer, rail, means something very different to our customers. So we have many people that are doing post river cruise. We don't offer river cruise. So we've got lots of people doing a post river cruise by rail, adding on to their trip. We also have a lot of people taking big bucket list trips, whether it's a Venice Simplon Orient Express. The other thing I think for us too is we're seeing a lot of single country focus with some of the rules and restrictions, and that flexibility that rail offers. So we've got a lot on the books, knock on wood, and we're seeing that on the FIT rail side going into this year, again, for lots of different reasons that our customers are traveling with us.
That's good. That's good. That's good to hear that it's positive for the rail journeys. Robin, how does it look for Rick Steves? Is it similar, or how does it, maybe not as much, but let me know.
It was interesting to hear Rachel speak about the intent to travel. So when we opened up our tour sales for the 2022 tour season, we sold out literally within 72 hours. We had sold everything that was available. And so that really spoke to the Americans, North Americans, and Canadians really want to travel, and they just were grasping at anything that they could get in hopes that they would be able to go. And now things are settling down a little bit as they're navigating more toward what does that mean? What is it going to look like? Am I sure I want to do this? So that again goes back to her slide about the intent versus booking versus I think I want to book. So we definitely see the intent and the demand. And the last slide forecasting, the sharp upturn between 2021 and 2022 also has to do with just where we can't ramp up where we don't have the services in place. Maybe we don't have the restaurants or the hotels have the same capacity that they had when it was 2019 and it was the highest of all travel. So we're just sort of ramping up slowly based on what our supply is and what we can provide for our tour members.
Thanks, Robin. So is that a trend you see that suppliers are not 100% up to speed from 2019, just because what has happened over the last few years?
Yes, I think the supply chain, just like it is here in North America, where we see that people have left jobs or companies have downsized, it's going to take a certain amount of time for those companies and those to restaff, rehire, and to grow themselves. Just like we are, we went from 30,000 tour members to 0. So that happened overnight. It's going to take a while for us to have all of the systems and the structure in place to get back up to support those 30,000 tour members. And in part, that's with our European partners. I see Mike shaking his head. I think maybe he's possibly having the same thing occur.
Yeah, Mike.
I would say Robin hit the nail on the head when it comes to group tour operator to Europe. We're seeing it in North America, but our concerns are, of course, how fast do you ramp up? How can the restaurants or the hotels accommodate a group coming in? Do they want to accommodate a group coming in? Those are the kind of questions we're asking the suppliers. Some of them, some are saying, no, we don't want a group coming in right now, of course, but I think that's going to be moderating going forward as things get back to some semblance of what it used to be. But it's not going to be immediate, and it's not going to, it's not going to be all hands on deck, because there's some hands are missing. So, that would be one thing that we're having to navigate and accommodate when it comes to a group setting. Yeah. Does that answer that?
Yes, no, definitely. Brett, is this the same trend you see for Colette? And also, how do you see 2022 going?
Yeah, first of all, Rachel, a great deck, and there's a lot to unpack there. But with regard to Colette and 2022, I have to remind everyone I'm wearing my Canada hat today, and talking largely about the Canada market. But of course, Colette is very much based and ensconced in the U.S. 2022 is looking really good, and Frank and I have had some history together, and Frank will understand this, that it's also we're big on the passion play. It's an Oberammergau year. The passion play, for those who many of you probably are familiar with it, in Oberammergau, Germany, is a big event for Colette, and it was canceled in 2020, moved to 2022. We had literally no drop off from that. I mean, we did have some, but that's a bucket list, as Mike mentioned. That's a bucket list event. So right now on the US side of the house, I'm just going to take my Canada hat off for a second. On the US side, we're running about 70% of 2019. Healthy because we had obviously rebooks and whatnot, and we had Oberammergau. On the Canadian side, we're running about 45%. And we can talk about the future. I just wanted to talk about, you know, where we are right now relative to 2022. I think there's a ton of opportunity here in Canada. Of course, the demand right now is probably, everyone knows Canadians are remarkably compliant. We kind of do what we're told to do. We don't make big spectacles, and our government right now has had a lot of restrictions. Right now we have a level 3 travel advisory, which discourages non-essential travel. That's back in place right now. In many parts of Canada, including where I am, we're in a state of lockdown in Quebec and here in Ontario. That won't be long lasting. We know that. It's going to go away soon. I think the operative word is opportunity. We are lagging behind the US market. We know that. But to Rachel's slide, we know that while Canada is a small pond, if you will, compared to the US, it's pretty good fishing. And once restrictions get out of the way, once we no longer have, and the industry is lobbying hard to do away with things like the PCR testing, which we have to do, or anyone would have to do coming to Canada. And for those of you who don't know, even when you arrive in Canada, you have to have a quarantine plan currently and a PCR test. So for Canadians thinking of traveling, they're going to wait it out for another month or two. But when those restrictions loosen, I think you're going to see a huge uptick in bookings. One last point I will say, because Sophie had mentioned about the advanced purchase, or maybe that was you, Rachel, it was Rachel. Pre-pandemic, the industry at large, and I can certainly speak for Colette, our industry, our business, the advanced purchase was 5.7 months prior to departure. That was the average. And we're finding the same trend right now. So it has not tightened up for Colette. It's still running around 6 months, which probably makes sense. Frank would probably, and maybe Mike and others would say it's tighter because we're a guided tour company. People tend to think about these things in advance. But the importance of that is we know there's a lot of demand everywhere, and certainly in North America. What it's really up to right now is for our government here in Canada to step out of the way, because the industry can keep people safe and will. We've proven that. And once the government does that, I don't expect those advanced purchase, I don't think that they will change. So what it means is if we begin to book in February or March from here, again, I've got my Canada hat on, we're probably looking at a fairly robust third and fourth quarter, and well into 2023. I would say my own predicament is that for Colette, we're going to beat the 2020 to 2019 numbers well before 2025. And I think the industry will, quite frankly. I think everyone here would agree to that.
That's really great. That's yeah, thanks, Brett. That's good to hear that. I'm sure that the entire supply chain who's listening in, they are happy to hear this. They're looking forward to see. We are all looking forward to see you back in Europe. That's for sure. So just to move on from the data and the slides that Rachel she presented. One thing I would like to hear is a little bit about obviously you talked about your demand now and how is that looking for 2022, but with regards to your products, have they changed? Has demand for different types of products, different types of destinations, have they changed? Maybe I'll start with Mike. How does it look for you?
Yeah, I'm probably your worst one to ask this when it comes to change. We are not planning on making a lot of changes because, you know, the nature of our business is stability when it comes to knowing our hotels, knowing our venues, working closely with our venues so we know what's going on the ground at all times. So we're not looking to make a lot of change, maybe some outdoor venues more, maybe a little bit shorter visits, maybe splitting up groups so that we have one half the group going in one spot and one half the group going in another spot. that's not necessarily a change in what we require from our suppliers, but it is kind of a change in how we're going to run the tour operation, because we need to make sure that everyone is happy and everything's smooth. You know, we know where all the potholes are sometimes on the road, but with this change in requirements that keep happening, we're really counting on the vendors to communicate back to us how they can help smoothly check us in the hotel, smoothly get us through a venue, or even maybe taking a tour of a pharmacy so we can get a green patch on our smartphone so we can keep going through Europe easily. Things like that. We need to get creative. If I may quote Peter Talk here in a conversation I had with him a couple days after 9/11. You know, the sharpest pictures are developed in the darkest rooms. And we've had time to be in the dark for a while, so I'm really counting on our hotels and the people on the ground helping us get these Americans. I just deal with Americans. I deal, yeah, maybe 1 or 2% of Canadians, but to get them through a tour smoothly, and we're counting on them to help us make that happen. If there's any change at all, it's more communication from our venues.
Thank you, Mike. And what you mentioned about splitting groups, for example, to go into different venues, I believe that could also have something to do with many attractions, for example, are no longer allowing, you know, 50 packs to go into
Right.
a museum or attraction, that you have to, simply because these are the rules.
Correct.
I have everyone nodding here. I think Robin was probably nodding the hardest. So do you have any comments for that?
I echo a lot of what Mike said, and I think for Rick Steves, we're not looking to change things. We want to just focus on keeping everything stable in 2022. However, we are also using this opportunity to look at what would it be like if we chose to divide our groups, even if the museums go back up to full capacity and allow groups of 30 to visit at one time. Is it a better experience to have it separated into 2 groups of 15? So we're evaluating that. We're not looking at making any major overhauls, really just want to go back to what were we aiming to do in 2020? Let's get the tours out the door, make sure that they're stable. And I do think, though, it's an opportunity for all vendors in Europe. We are going to be needing more and new partners. So I don't think we're going to make any drastic overnight route kind of changes. However, we are going to be looking for lots of new activities, experiences, restaurants to fit into the existing packages.
That's good. That's definitely a shout out to our suppliers. Get in contact with these guys, because there's a lot of demand here. New opportunities, definitely. Frank, how is it looking for you and your like change in demand, change in product types?
Sure. You know, for us, again, we're different. So I should explain how we develop product, because it's really our model that's different. So for us, you know, the way we develop product is, as an example, we have a team of analysts that will submit to our product team every week to say, hey, 326 people did this combination, this city, this rail, overnight here, this sightseeing. Our product team from there names that itinerary, prices it every single day of the year. The train runs 2 years out, gives it to our marketing team to now promote it. That happens in a 24-hour period. So we're constantly launching new product based on trends that we're seeing. So even during your peak of COVID time, you know, March through October 2020, domestic in the US, we launched 157 new itineraries because people were going to different areas, not going to cities in the US, as an example. So we're built for change and we're built for speed, because remember, FIT, one person, it runs, right? I don't have the minimum numbers. So for us, we're constantly launching new product, and we're seeing many different products every single week. Again, we may be a piece of someone's travel. They may be going over for something else, visiting family. I mentioned River Cruise before, doing a post onto that. for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, or a post. So we're seeing lots of new areas and places we haven't seen before in different routings that we're seeing based on demand that's coming in, but it's typically tied to something else. We don't sell air, we don't sell river cruise, but we'll ask those questions at the time our travel advisor or our consumer books of, tell us about the whole trip that you're doing, even if we're only doing a piece of it. So we're definitely seeing, and that's driving our demand. You know, that's an independent travel is a little more adventurous, if you want to call it that. They're a little more adventurous. They've researched a little bit more on what they want to do and some of the restrictions that are there. So we're seeing lots of new products and destinations to secondary cities. And I think the last thing I would say is Europe in general has over 26,000 train stations, to give you an idea. So the infrastructure is already in place. It's wherever someone wants to go. And like I said before, our attitude, if the train goes there, so do we. So it's been fascinating for us and our product team to see areas that are in some ways new to us that they're extending on their trip going overseas. So that's what we're seeing.
Thank you. And that exercise, and it answers a little bit the question that we have received just from the panel now about, so what about more sustainable products and less busier destinations? And Frank, you're saying you're definitely seeing more of the secondary destinations in your products than you did before.
We are. We see the main, but we're seeing a lot of the secondary and the extending out, you know, because I think what we're seeing is people overall, even if we're only doing a piece of it, they're traveling a little longer, they're spending a little bit more. I mean, they've waited 2 years to take a vacation. So they're really, it's a celebration. It's really not a vacation. I can't tell you how many, it's an anniversary, it's a birthday, delayed birthday, and that's what they're taking. So they're extending it. We're benefiting from some of that. The other piece of it too, because it's independent travel, they can travel independently in a sustainable way. They don't need to fly between cities in Europe. They can take the train. So that's what we're seeing, and we're lucky and thankful. We're benefiting from the position that we're in. Thank
you. So Brett, how about Colette? I know you run different types of sort of group tours or tours. Do you see like more types of sustainable products, less famous destinations in your product range? Maybe this is something that was already being developed 18, 19 and then stopped, or how does it look for Colette?
Yeah, Sophie, I think you're bang on. I think there were certain things that we were doing pre-pandemic. One of the things that we were experimenting with things like choice on tour, allowing individuals to choose options so disbursement, right? Allowing people to, not an entire group, but to disperse. We're going to see a lot more of that. We are now we're experimenting with dining at leisure, for example. Instead of groups going for dinner, we'll have a chosen restaurant or two, and they'll go to one or the other. Certainly, timed arrivals are going to be important. We're not going to be, we used to show up as everyone did and line up in queue and wait for an hour and a half. That's not going to happen anymore. I think it's a very good thing. We have two different products. We have, as I mentioned at the outset, we have our classic product, which is our motor coach. We have our exploration product, which depending on where in the world, it could be capped at 18 or 24, but that tour, an exploration product could run with 8, 9, 12 people. So it's sort of like traveling with a family. And I think what will be interesting is we were seeing a small uptick pre-pandemic in the exploration brand. And I'm talking small because everyone wants it, but when it comes to paying for it, right, it's a different story. So everyone would express an interest. We love the idea of traveling with 12 or 15 or 18 people, but it was maybe for some prohibitive. But I think what we're going to see is that people are putting a different type of value on travel now. To Frank's point, if you've missed family get-togethers, if you've missed birthdays, travel is a great way to reconnect, and I think people will be willing to spend more. I think we are going to see the exploration small group become a greater and greater and greater thing. I think generally, I think it's going to be a trend in the industry. And of course, the fact that we work with local guides in Europe is increasingly a benefit. What with all the testing and whatnot we need to do, just finding places to test. And so if people did not fully appreciate the value of a tour manager before, they will now. So I think, as Frank mentioned, I think every company is going to, it may be a little bit clunky at first, especially on the group side. But I think ultimately we're going to all fall into place. I think it's going to work really, really well. And I think on the other side of this pandemic, I think it's going to be a much, much, much better travel experience.
Great, that sounds good. So, what can the supply chain do to help all of this? How can the supply chain help you to create these products that you want, like smaller, potentially smaller groups, all run the same way as you are doing now? Obviously, with limited capacity, as you also mentioned, Robin, that they simply the supply chain is not fully there yet, at least not the ones that you've been talking to. What can the supply chain do? Is there anything you'd like to ask, say, request? We have them all here listening in. So this is a good opportunity if you have any wishes. Robin, if you want to start.
Sure, yes. I think flexibility is the key. I think everyone here would agree that a good partnership is only a good partnership if it's beneficial to both sides. We don't want to take advantage of the European suppliers, and we hope that the European suppliers are not going to want to take advantage of us. That said, we do need to be flexible about cancellation terms and conditions and time frames, and as well as deposits and non-refundable deposits. That's really important for us. We understand that our European suppliers need to protect themselves, and so we're seeing a lot more of those terms and conditions being written into contracts, and they're still equitable, right? We're not asking that you just let us do whatever we want and cancel whenever we want and get all of our money back. We're asking to find a compromise solution where we can have the confidence that we can book with you, and if we need to change something in a realistic time frame, we're not going to be overtly penalized for that. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's been really interesting because I manage our tours that run from everywhere from Portugal to Greece, to see different areas of Europe, how they have either increased rates at hotels, kept the rates the same, or even in some places decreased rates. And it's interesting to see the infrastructure of those countries, that where are rates being increased versus where are they being kept the same or decreased. That's been a little bit surprising for me. So we understand, it's been 2 years, everyone's been through this pandemic and everyone's trying to recoup and make money. Really, we are just asking for compromise and flexibility. I think those are the two biggest things.
Thank you. There's some nodding here. Frank, anything to add to that you would request from suppliers?
Yeah, definitely reiterating what Robin said, totally agree on that, on the flexibility. The other piece that I would say too for the European operators, speaking from an FIT operator, is, and I know it's a cost factor, but have some of these fantastic experiences for FIT, not just for group, because there's too many times that I see, and I get it, it's a monetary thing. Too many times I'll have a conversation with a partner and they'll say, well, this partner is bringing us 80 people a month in 2 groups of 40. And I'm like, right. And I'm bringing 500 people a month, but they're all over certain days. So have a experience light version for the FIT operator, because we have the people coming. They're looking for experiences, but they're not coming 20 or 40 in a shot. They could be coming 3, 4 every single day. So that would be my suggestion. So too many times we offer or create other things that are not there because that experience is built for the group model, yet if we listen earlier on the stats, it was only 11%, if you caught the number, 11% of 2019 came over as a group. That means the rest are coming over FIT. So FIT is a much bigger market and opportunity. So if you can find a way to price it accordingly, I think it'll warm it up for when group operations will all come back. And it will all come back, I totally agree with what Brett's saying, but it warms it up, then you get the best of both. So that would be my suggestion, just an ask. So.
Thank you. Mike, do you have anything to add to that? What would you like to request from the suppliers?
Well, I want to apologize to Frank for for us group operators turning the screws on our suppliers and making it harder on them. But I think Robin nailed it really. Frank's right there and Brett's right there too, because it's coming back. It's just a matter of the understanding. We need the understanding. Robin described as flexibility. but it's really an understanding that if we're a multi-country tour operator, and a group has to cancel for whatever reason, because of something happening in one country, it might affect another country, even though you don't feel that's not happening in my country, because we got our stuff together over here. But if another country happens to where we have to cancel a trip, understand that it might affect several different countries because that group is going through different countries. So just keep in mind that there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to a European tour operator, a group tour operator, because we're in many cases hitting a lot of different areas, and just one area can cause issues. We all know what happened several years ago in Paris. That affected some hotels in Austria for us, because it was on the same itinerary. So again, what Robin said, flexibility, understanding. We want to come and bring our groups to all your destinations. We want to bring people, especially Americans and Canadians. We like to spend money when we go over there. So let us come over there, but understand that if something gets in our way, such as an Iceland volcano, we have to have some flexibility and make things work, because eventually we're coming back. So it just give us a chance to honor our deals that we're making with you, because eventually we are gonna honor those deals. Does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Definitely does. Brett, anything for you to add about how to work better with suppliers? What the supply chain can do?
For me, well, yeah, if the supplier chain can help us. A lot of times we don't know on a week-to-week basis what's going on the ground. So they need to think about, if we have a reservation with them 8 or 9 months out, or they know we're coming. I'll just give an example. We had to talk to a hotel operator when there were floods on the Rhine. So can we come to your hotel? Yeah, you can come. There's no problem. The headlines say you can't, but I know you can. So, and I know you're coming, and I'm going to make sure that you can get here. That's the kind of communication we need when there's a headline that says one thing and reality is something else. And we all know that's happening all the time. And so we just need to be accommodative of our needs when we're coming. I guess that's the flexibility we're looking for. Does that answer it?
Yeah, that's really the sort of the information sharing, because it is difficult when you're on the other side of the pond, and you're trying to understand, and news is news, isn't it? And the media is sometimes making things a little bit more difficult than they are. So yeah, no, it makes sense. Brett, do you have anything to add for the suppliers?
Definitely. I think one thing that I mentioned at the outset was the word opportunity. We have an incredible opportunity now to pivot, and back pre-pandemic, I think we all were talking about, hey, peak season, high season, low season. I don't think we're using those words anymore. I know I won't be. I think there's a huge, although I don't have another word for off season, but there's got to be a new word. But I think there's a huge opportunity and a demand now for off-season travel. Someone needs to name it better, because we don't want to promote it as off-season. We need a word, folks, or a brand. But we did push certain, especially with Europe. There was a 4 or 5 months of the year which we really pushed. And some destinations, I will tell you that one of our top sellers right now is our Northern Lights tour in Iceland, and we're offering one in Finland. Its bookings are off the charts. It shows that you can travel to destinations at a time of year when people might not otherwise think to go. But as we've all talked about, if we can come up with a reason why, people will go and take advantage of maybe perhaps a better price, right? Less people. It helps with we're all trying to disseminate or disperse bookings now across 12 months. There's a huge opportunity for that because there is a demand for that. People who would have otherwise thought about only going in July or August or September might think about a trip to Italy or Ireland or Croatia or wherever in March, April, or for Canadians, November is an incredible opportunity because unlike in the US where you have American Thanksgiving, we have no holidays in November in Canada, and the weather is getting lousy. Canadians love to travel in November. So if you can come up with an incentive, it's a great opportunity. I would also just, interesting that we did a poll of taking off my Colette hat and putting on an altogether different hat, but I'm also volunteer chair of an organization, the Canadian Association of Tour Operators. And in 2021, we commissioned BDO to undertake a poll. This was back in September of 2021. And we asked tour operators what they felt would be the biggest impediment, some of the biggest impediments going forward. Now, this was at a different time. Omicron wasn't around. But number one was the Canadian dollar. The value of the Canadian dollar remains the number one concern for Canadian tour operators. I'm sure if you asked that question, it would absolutely be in the top spot or second. So for any suppliers, especially with regard to the Canadian market, understand that pricing is important. That's true of any market, but when you look at the value of the Canadian dollar to the euro or to the US, Canadians are going to pay a lot more to travel, which is, it's great that there's a higher propensity to travel. Can you imagine what we could do if we could mitigate that exchange somehow, right? Fortunately, the Canadian dollar is going up a little bit of late, but maybe just take a look, insofar as the Canadian market goes, and the traditionally what was the off season, to really take a look at what your pricing is and see if you might be able to capitalize on months like November, where I'm sure everyone could use a little more business.
Thank you, Brett. That's good to look at all the seasons as well. That's definitely a way to also spread, to spread tourism around. We also don't want to end up in a 2019 situation where all of the big cities are getting too crowded and they don't want tourism anymore, because that's obviously not where we want to get to. And that actually brings me to a little bit of not another discussion, but we actually have quite a few questions coming in here about destinations themselves. So destination companies, DMOs, national tourism boards. First of all, there are two questions I would like to ask. That the audience has asked is, what can a destination do to help you create better products? So obviously they have the local supply network. There might be tiny businesses, much smaller micro suppliers out there. So how can they help promote better to you and help you plan your products? But also, how do we combine, and is it something you're looking at, how do we combine the bigger destinations, with the second tier destination or secondary destinations that might not be, the first thing that people want to visit, but actually they have a lot to offer. So it would be good. We have 6 minutes now to talk a little bit about destinations. How can tour operators work with destinations? Frank, maybe we can start with you and hear what do you want to say? Because I know you definitely mentioned that you're looking at more smaller destinations. That's what your clients are also looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say obviously the first part that I mentioned earlier is those unique experiences and having those that would help us because we add that to the product. So that's the first thing. The second thing is our customers are definitely looking for little luxury. Everyone wants luxury, but they're looking for a little bit of luxury. So what in those destinations, what do you have that can give that person to experience that little taste of luxury, right? It may not be the whole thing is 5-star, but they want those little luxury, and that helps add to that. As far as the secondary destinations tagged on to a volume destination, honestly, if the train goes there, help us out on that, in terms of it's connecting there and it's connecting to, and what makes that spot unique. And then we can add that into our itineraries, because normally For us, again, as I talked about before, when a customer or travel advisor comes to us, it may be an add-on and maybe what they're looking for. And again, I should add, our customer isn't a rail traveler, by the way. Even though we sell rail, they're a traveler. They're looking to connect and experience it, and they may not want to drive or go different ways. But in that, that they can see what historically that they're going to see along the way that you wouldn't know in that secondary see, that enhances that overall experience, that helps paint that travel story. So that would be some of the things that would help us adding those secondary destinations.
That is, yeah, thank you. So when you talk to the bigger destinations, you want to know which partners they work with around, so you can understand what the smaller or the secondary, border destinations they can actually do for you.
Absolutely. My question always to the top destinations is, where else are people going outside of your destination? To give me the whole picture of where they're going so I can see where there's opportunity. So, because we can tag on the secondary destinations, because people want to find that hidden gem. They want to know that, but it may not be the #1 reason why they're going, but they want to find that. So that helps us market and sell that product in that destination.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's it's obviously not always the case, but sometimes when you go traveling, actually the small gems is that little village or the little destination you didn't think would be that amazing, but you kind of what you expect from the big destinations, and then the secondary destination is actually really, really, really showing up to be as good or better sometimes. Robin, how would you like to work with destinations? What can they do for you?
Well, what's been really great over the last 18 months is getting all of the virtual workshops that either city-specific or country destination management companies or tourist boards have been offering. That's really been inspiring. It's been great to see. I do catch once in a while, I'll get something and I'll be like, oh, that's a great hotel, or that's an experience I want to try. And I do keep track of that. So it's really great to have newsletters, articles, be part of those mailing lists. And I would encourage anybody listening to, if you're not already part of national tourist boards or those kinds of tourist information lists, go join them, because those newsletters are really great. For us, Rick Steves is always focused on what we call the back doors, those secondary locations. So for us, we're always looking out for what else is there that's important, that is a good mixture of the marquee sites, because let's face it, we've all grown up hearing about, I've got the Eiffel Tower in the background of my painting back here. I mean, we grow up with these marquee destinations that we want to see. And sometimes they live up to our expectations. And like you said, Sophie, sometimes those secondary backdoor gems exceed those expectations that we had for the thing that we'd always dreamed about seeing. So working with local DMCs and tourist boards and tourist information offices, we're always looking at what else is new, what kind of experiential, culturally enriching travel opportunities are there, just like Frank is mentioning. Finding those activities are really, really important.
Thank you. Mike, so how about you? Because as you say, many of your clients, they're maybe going to Europe for the first time, so maybe the secondary destination is not that interesting. But do you still work with them?
Yeah, we always work with secondary locations, and I hate calling them secondary. I mean, they're really primary when in our tours. What we have to do is we have to include Paris. We got to include Munich. We have to include Amsterdam. But what we bake in automatically, because they don't know they want to see these things. They don't realize it. You have to bake it in, and it's those experiences where you're in a location, and don't take this the wrong way, but let's admit it. You go out in the country and they're all nice to you. You go in the city, not so much, right? So in the country, they get that nice feeling of being welcomed in the country. So I always tell them, don't take it, don't be offended if you get if someone rubs you the wrong way in Paris or something like that. I mean, they're rubbing everybody the wrong way. So no worries, it's all fine. We're going to go out in the countryside in France, and we're going to walk through a vineyard, and we're going to end up at a nice place. It's all of those little villages that we visit that that the DMOs there don't think they have an advantage, but you really do. And we really want to go to your destination, but we have to advertise the sexier locations first, get them booked, and then show them your destination. And always come to us telling us, you know, we just refurbished this area and we want you to come here. Hey, send it to us. Give us that information. We'll bake it in, no problem. The tour managers are always looking for a new place to go to. So with the hand in hand with the tour managers and the local cities and villages, hey, we're listening all the time for that hidden gem that we want to take our clients to, so that we as a tour operator can look like we know what we're doing, right? And it's all because you guys brought it to us. So that's how you guys can help us.
Thank you very much. That's very good speech, Mike. Like, I think I can see we have a few comments here saying, "Welcome to our destination," and we have, as you might have noticed in our membership, we have a lot of destinations, also a lot of secondary destinations. So you say they're not secondary; they're actually gems. So you can definitely meet them out there. And I think it's also a call out to those destinations, and then the sort of the primary destinations, or they have to go to destinations, working together better so they can create those products. So operators like you can understand how do these actually work together, and how can products be developed around that. We are running just over time now, but Brett, do you have a final comment about how to work with destinations? Then I'll end this webinar very shortly after that. Oh, I think you are on mute.
I apologize, in 30 seconds or less. I appreciate the time. Colette is a mainstream operator. I think for mainstream operators, we are a little bit averse to trying to create demand for destinations, as opposed to cater to it. So what I would say to everyone on the phone today is, or on the webinar today, is that, just one recommendation is, if you want to skip, I mean, it's very difficult, let's face it, to create demand for a destination within the consumer market if they don't already know about it. So to try and convince tour operators and others to include a supplier or anyone, a destination, perhaps joining organizations like Cato or ETOA or ETOA, and go directly to the tour operators when you can. So that the tour operator will take the time to learn about the destination or the attraction or the supplier that they may not otherwise know, and see if, again, if they can incorporate it, that will enhance the product that they've already got. I think that's it for now. That's all. It's a very difficult thing.
Thank you, Brett. And I think that that's a good way to end it as well. There's so many opportunities out there. It's really great. And actually, just to end and see how do you actually meet you guys is 1st of March, we have a travel trade marketplace focusing on the North American market. So come and join that. I don't know if all of you have signed up, but I definitely know many of you will. So go ahead and have a look at that. We'll send out information about that as well. But meeting you operators in person is probably the first way to really get into the programs. But I would like to thank you all very much for your participation today. It has been very enlightening, very good. We have a lot of questions coming in. Unfortunately, yes, I'm sorry, we haven't been able to answer all of them or many of them at all. Simply just running out of time. We will not steal any more of your time. But all of the questions, we'll have a look through them, and we will also get back to you individually for them. So thank you very much, and all of the audience as well for listening in. And thank you very much for all of that. Thank you, and have a lovely evening, have a lovely afternoon, or wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.